Welcome to Pillowtime lore, my dear ones. Have you ever noticed how the world can feel so loud sometimes? How the hours stretch with noise and hurry, and your mind just wants to hide away? Tonight, let's take a little escape together, just you and me, into a place where the day softens and the world grows quiet. Close your eyes for a moment and remember those childhood nights, the way a soft blanket felt against your skin, the gentle hum of someone's voice beside you, the comforting weight of a hand brushing your hair, the way stories could make time stop, even if just for a little while. Do you remember the way your imagination would bloom then, turning shadows into castles, whispers into adventures, and small bedtime rituals into tiny pieces of magic? That magic is still inside you, waiting to be remembered, waiting for tonight. Here at Pillowtime Lore, every story is a little key, a soft spark, a gentle whisper to your soul. Some tales will make you smile, some may make you wonder, and some will simply hold you like a warm hug, letting you breathe and rest. So, tell me, my dear, what do you need tonight? A journey to far-off lands, a quiet story that feels like home, or perhaps just a little comfort, a reminder that the day is over and it's safe to let go. Wrap yourself in your blankets, sink into your pillow, and let the words carry you into a world where worries cannot follow, where dreams wait patiently for you, and every story feels like it was told just for you. Welcome to Pillowtime Lore, where every night becomes a gentle embrace, and every story is a soft, magical place for your heart to rest. There are moments in life when everything around us seems calm, yet inside, our hearts carry storms no one else can see. We smile, we go on with our days, while quietly holding unspoken dreams and memories we cannot put into words. And sometimes, it is not the great events that shape us, but the small, quiet ones, a glance, a choice, a meeting we never expected. This story is about such a meeting, set in a quiet village by a moonlit lake, a place where the nights hold secrets and the days pass in gentle rhythm. At its heart is Elena, a young woman with a tender yet restless spirit, someone who longs for something more than the life she has always known. Beside her is Clara, her sweet little sister whose laughter brings light to even the darkest moments, and their aunt, Mrs. Whitmore, warm, bustling, and endlessly full of life. Across the lake lies Hartwood Manor, silent and mysterious until the arrival of Daniel, a man whose presence stirs both curiosity and whispers among the villagers. He carries a past hidden behind quiet eyes, one that no one truly understands. This is not a tale of grand heroes, but of ordinary people, of trust and misunderstanding, of loneliness and belonging, and of how even the smallest encounters can change the course of our lives. Listen closely now, for in the stillness of the moonlit lake, truths will rise to the surface, and hearts will find their way home. Elena Rivers had always loved her evening walks by the lake. It was her favorite escape, a quiet pocket of peace where no one demanded anything from her. The lake shimmered under the moonlight, calm and still, as if holding its breath. The air carried a coolness that brushed against her skin and cleared her mind, while the village was filled with chatter, gossip, and endless routines. This place felt like freedom, a space where she could think, dream, and simply be herself. Sometimes she wondered if she was the only one who felt trapped in the sameness of village life, longing for something more, yet unsure what that more really was. Her aunt, Mrs. Whitmore, often teased her, claiming Elena spent too much time with her thoughts and not enough with people. Mrs. Whitmore was lively and charming, thriving on gatherings, laughter, and the swirl of social events. She constantly urged Elena to join her at tea parties and dinners, saying she needed to live a little. Elena would always smile and decline politely, knowing she would rather wander by the lake than sit through forced conversations. Her younger sister, Clara, teased her as well, calling her a hermit, but her teasing was light-hearted and filled with love. Clara never truly understood Elena's need for quiet, though she respected it. That evening, the sky was unusually clear, the moon casting a silvery path across the water. Elena walked slowly along the shore, lost in thought, when something unusual caught her attention across the lake. On the far side, where the ruins of Hartwood Manor stood, faint lights flickered through the shattered windows. Elena stopped in her tracks, her heart quickening. Hartwood Manor had been abandoned for as long as she could remember. Villagers spoke of it in hushed tones, telling stories of its past glory and sudden downfall. Some even whispered it was cursed or haunted, yet no one had dared to step inside for years. Elena's mind swirled with questions. Who would return to such a place, and why now? She stared at the glowing windows, a strange mix of excitement and unease coursing through her, unaware that this single moment would unravel the quiet life she had always known and pull her toward a mystery she could never have imagined. The next morning, the usually calm village seemed alive in a way Elena had never seen before. There was a hum in the air, a restless energy that traveled through every narrow street and small cottage. As she walked past neighbors' homes, she caught bits and pieces of hushed voices and hurried conversations. Everyone seemed to be talking about the same thing: the mysterious lights at Hartwood Manor the night before. By the time she stepped into the kitchen, her aunt, Mrs. Whitmore, was already in the middle of an animated discussion with Clara, her eyes gleaming with the thrill of new gossip. She announced with great importance that someone had moved into the manor, a man named Daniel Hartwood. Elena froze for a moment. The name carried a certain weight. It sounded old, rooted in history, as though it belonged to someone with a story far bigger than their small village. Mrs. Whitmore, brimming with excitement, insisted they go to the village market immediately. She claimed it was the best place to gather the latest news. Elena reluctantly agreed, though she secretly longed for the quiet morning she had planned by the lake. The cobblestone path leading to the market was unusually crowded. People huddled together in small clusters, their voices hushed but eager. Every villager seemed to have their own version of who Daniel Hartwood was. One woman swore he was a wealthy city man come to restore his family's estate. Another insisted he had returned in disgrace after a scandal, while an older man shook his head and muttered that Daniel was too proud and cold to mix with simple folk like them. The rumors swirled like autumn leaves caught in a restless wind, each story more dramatic than the last. Elena listened quietly, her face calm though her mind raced. She told herself that people always exaggerated, yet a strange curiosity stirred inside her. There was something compelling about a man who would choose to live in a place so empty and mysterious. When they returned home, Mrs. Whitmore chattered about throwing a gathering to welcome him. Elena only half listened, her thoughts drifting back to the flickering lights she had seen. Sometimes, she thought, life had a way of sending small signs before everything changed, and she couldn't shake the feeling that Daniel Hartwood's arrival was one of those signs. 2 evenings later, the long-awaited village gathering finally took place. Mrs. Whitmore's dear friend, Mrs. Allen, had generously opened her home for the event, and it felt as though the entire village had gathered under her roof. The house was filled with warmth and light, voices mingling with the clinking of teacups, the air carrying the comforting scent of freshly baked bread and sweet pies. Elena stood quietly near a window at first, her hands clasped together, watching the lively crowd with a mix of amusement and discomfort. She had never been fond of such social events, but Mrs. Whitmore had insisted it was her duty to attend, reminding her that first impressions could shape the way people remembered you. Elena had agreed, though in her heart she wished to be by the lake, where the only sounds were the gentle ripple of water and her own thoughts. When Daniel Hartwood finally entered, the room seemed to pause. Conversations softened as all eyes turned toward him. He was tall and carried himself with quiet confidence, his dark hair slightly damp, as if he had been walking under the cool evening air. There was nothing overtly dramatic about him, yet something about his presence demanded attention. Mrs. Allen hurried forward to greet him, her voice bright with excitement as she introduced him to each guest in turn. When he reached Elena, she offered a polite smile and a simple greeting, but he merely nodded, his voice calm and quiet, his gaze distant and unreadable. A small flush rose to Elena's cheeks. She was accustomed to warmth and kindness in return. His coldness unsettled her in a way she did not understand. As the evening went on, they spoke again, their conversation turning to the village and its ways. Elena's natural wit and honesty slipped through as she talked. She was not one to hide her thoughts behind false charm, but instead of smiling or laughing, Daniel remained reserved, his replies careful and measured, each word chosen with precision. Frustration stirred inside Elena. She thought perhaps the rumors were true. Perhaps he really was too proud to care for anyone here. By the end of the evening, she muttered to Clara and Mrs. Whitmore that he was cold and unkind. Yet, as she turned to leave, Daniel's gaze followed her, a flicker of admiration in his eyes. He saw in her a spirit he had not expected, one he intended to understand, though for now he kept those thoughts to himself. In the days that followed, the village seemed to breathe only one name, Daniel Hartwood. It was as if his arrival had stirred something deep within the quiet rhythm of their lives. Every time Elena stepped outside, she was met with murmurs floating through the air like the hum of restless bees. On narrow streets and at the busy market, neighbors huddled close, sharing stories that twisted and changed with each telling. Some swore Daniel was hiding a dark scandal, perhaps one involving betrayal or ruined fortunes. Others claimed he was simply too proud to mingle with ordinary folk, saying he spent his evenings locked away in Hartwood Manor, rarely seen except for the occasional solitary walk by the lake. The rumors grew wilder with each passing day, like fire feeding on dry grass, and no one seemed willing to let the truth simply be. Clara, with her gentle heart and unfailing optimism, refused to believe such tales. She reminded Elena that people were often misunderstood, that judgment passed too quickly could turn kindness into suspicion. Clara's soft voice was full of hope as she spoke, her words carrying the kind of innocence that Elena both loved and feared for her. She urged her sister to keep an open mind, to see beyond the stories others wove. Elena, however, could not forget her first impression of Daniel, the coolness in his gaze, the quiet distance in his voice. There was a kind of strength in him, yes, but it was a strength wrapped in walls she could not see through, and that unsettled her deeply. She felt a strange mix of frustration and protectiveness, especially toward Clara, who was easily charmed by warm words and friendly smiles. Elena had always been the shield in their small family, the one to stand firm when others faltered. One evening, as they sat by the hearth, Clara's laughter soft and bright, Elena warned her firmly to keep her distance from Daniel, saying they knew nothing of his past or his intentions. Clara tried to brush it off, calling Elena overly cautious, yet she finally agreed not to approach him alone. Elena felt some relief at that promise, though unease still clung to her, for she sensed that Daniel Hartwood was a man carrying secrets. And secrets had a way of changing everything when they finally came to light. The sky was heavy with dark clouds as Elena walked back from the market, her basket filled with bread and fresh vegetables clutched tightly to her side. She walked briskly, hoping to reach home before the storm broke. The path by the lake was unusually quiet. Only the rustling of leaves and the distant call of a bird broke the silence. Then, without warning, the clouds split open and rain poured down in thick, relentless sheets. Elena gasped, her breath catching as she searched for shelter. Spotting a large tree nearby, she ran beneath its wide branches. Though they did little to keep her fully dry, the air smelled of rain and wet earth, and the steady drumming of water filled the night like a song of its own. As she caught her breath, she noticed a tall figure emerging through the mist and pouring rain. For a heartbeat, she thought it was a trick of the storm. But then recognition struck. It was Daniel Hartwood. His coat clung to him, soaked through, his dark hair falling across his forehead. He seemed just as startled to see her there. For a long moment, they simply stood, rain falling between them like a curtain. Daniel was the first to speak, his voice calm and steady as he asked if she was all right. Elena nodded, slightly breathless, explaining she had been caught while returning from the market. Daniel glanced toward the lake, his expression serious, and said it was unwise to be alone near the water after dark, offering to wait with her until the rain lessened and then walk her home. There was a quiet protectiveness in his tone that surprised her. As they stood beneath the tree, their conversation began hesitantly, like two strangers testing unfamiliar ground, but soon the words flowed more easily. Daniel spoke of his love for the countryside, how the lake reminded him of childhood summers when life had been simpler and free of expectations. Elena, in turn, shared her dreams of traveling far beyond the village, of seeing places she had only read about in books. To her surprise, she found warmth in his words, a depth she had not expected, and in his eyes, there was a trace of admiration she could not ignore. Just as the moment grew comfortable, a lone villager passed by, glancing curiously at the sight of them together. Later, this single glance would grow into a storm of rumors, twisting their innocent meeting into something it was not. As Elena and Daniel parted ways under the clearing sky, neither knew how deeply this encounter would ripple through the village and into their lives. The evening began with a strange stillness, the kind that makes the skin prickle as though the world itself is holding back a warning. The air was heavy and warm, carrying a tension that seemed to settle over the entire village. Dark clouds gathered slowly above the distant hills, their shadows creeping over rooftops like an approaching army. A low rumble of thunder rolled through the air. Deep and unsettling, Mrs. Whitmore hurried about the house, urging everyone to close shutters and secure the doors before the storm struck. Clara, eager to be useful and always quick to act, decided to run outside and gather the laundry drying near the lake. Elena's instincts stirred uneasily. She told Clara to wait, sensing the storm would be fierce and unpredictable. But Clara only laughed, her cheerful voice filled with certainty as she promised she would be back in moments. Before Elena could stop her, Clara had vanished into the thickening mist, her figure swallowed by the darkening evening. The storm broke with terrifying force. The wind howled like a living creature, bending trees until their branches groaned. Leaves and debris swirled violently across the path, and rain crashed down in heavy sheets, soaking the earth and turning it into treacherous mud. Elena's heart pounded with dread as she realized Clara had not returned. Fear clawed at her chest, leaving no room for thought, only action. She grabbed a shawl, wrapped it tightly around her shoulders, and plunged into the storm, calling Clara's name again and again, her voice nearly lost beneath the roar of the wind. When Elena reached the edge of the lake, her fear deepened. The water churned wildly, crashing against the shore in violent waves, but there was no sign of Clara. Despair threatened to take hold just as tears stung her eyes. A figure appeared through the chaos. It was Daniel, his coat plastered to his frame, his face set with determination. He shouted above the storm that he had seen Clara near the far side of the lake and was searching for her. Without hesitation, Elena followed, her trust placed in him despite her doubts. Together, they battled the storm, their steps unsteady yet relentless, until at last they found Clara huddled beneath a tree. Trembling with fear, Daniel lifted her easily into his arms, his strength steady and sure. When they reached home, Elena's relief was overwhelming as she watched Daniel slip quietly away without asking for thanks. Something shifted inside her heart. Sometimes, she realized, actions reveal truths that words never could. The morning after the storm dawned calm and golden. Sunlight glimmered on raindrops that clung to every leaf and branch. The air was cool and sweet, carrying the scent of wet earth. Elena stood by the window, her thoughts tangled like threads. She could not forget the sight of Daniel carrying Clara through the furious storm, his face set with determination, his steps unshaken despite the raging wind. Sometimes a single moment can alter the way we see a person, and Elena felt that her heart had crossed an unseen line that night. She knew she could not let the day pass without thanking him properly. After breakfast, she prepared a small basket, carefully wrapping warm bread and a jar of honey. Simple offerings, but heartfelt. Mrs. Whitmore raised an eyebrow when Elena announced she was going for a walk, her knowing smile hinting at unspoken thoughts. Elena blushed but said nothing. For some feelings are too fragile to share until the right moment. With steady steps, she made her way toward Hartwood Manor, her heart thrumming with a mixture of nerves and resolve. The manor rose before her, tall and silent, its weathered stone walls carrying echoes of a past both proud and broken. Ivy clung to its sides like memories that refused to fade. Elena hesitated at the heavy wooden door, then knocked, her breath catching. When Daniel appeared, his surprise was clear. His guarded expression softened slightly at the sight of the basket in her hands. She thanked him with sincere words, her voice trembling with gratitude. Daniel seemed uncertain at first, as though unused to kindness. Then he stepped aside and invited her in, leading her to a sitting room where faded tapestries and worn furniture spoke of former glory, now dimmed by time. They sat across from one another, and after a pause, Daniel began to speak. His voice steady yet shadowed with sorrow. He told her how his family had once been among the most respected in the region, their wealth vast and their name spoken with admiration. Yet greed and betrayal by those they trusted had brought ruin. Debts piled high, friends turned their backs, and tragedy struck, leaving Daniel to face the ruins of both his home and his heart. He had spent years in the city, laboring endlessly to rebuild himself, and had returned not to hide, but to begin again in quiet strength. Elena listened without interruption, her heart heavy with empathy, realizing how wrong she had been to judge him by whispers and assumptions. She thought of how quickly people form opinions without knowing the battles another has fought. Sometimes, she realized, the strongest souls are the ones who carry their pain in silence. And as she looked at Daniel, something within her shifted, a fragile understanding blooming where suspicion once lived. The days after the storm were alive with preparation, the village buzzing with the promise of the annual harvest festival. It was the one time each year when everyone came together, leaving behind their daily worries to celebrate the season's end and the fruits of their labor. The lake would be encircled with lanterns, tables overflowing with food, and the air would hum with music and laughter. Mrs. Whitmore was determined that this year would be unforgettable, bustling from room to room, instructing Elena and Clara to help with decorations, and to Elena's quiet surprise, even convincing Daniel to join in, though he did so with his usual calm reserve, giving little room for refusal. On the morning of the festival, the village square sparkled with life. Children ran, carrying garlands of flowers, their laughter ringing like bells, while adults arranged colorful stalls, hung ribbons, and tested small lanterns. Daniel arrived quietly, observing before joining, moving with a steady diligence that slowly drew the attention of those around him. He lifted crates and arranged tables, his hands strong and sure. Elena watched from a distance, noting the subtle change in the villagers' expressions, suspicion giving way to tentative smiles, small gestures of thanks and greetings breaking down invisible walls. It was remarkable to see how quiet deeds and earnest effort could soften even the hardest of impressions. As evening fell, lanterns were lit one by one, casting golden reflections on the still water. Music blended with the gentle breeze, and the smell of fresh bread, roasted nuts, and sweet pastries floated through the air. The village hummed with joy, and Mrs. Whitmore's pride was evident as she moved among friends and family. Elena found herself near Daniel by the edge of the lake, away from the crowd, their shared silence almost sacred. The reflection of the lanterns shimmered on the water like tiny stars fallen to earth. No words were needed between them, yet Elena felt the weight of unspoken understanding, gratitude, and a quiet admiration. She realized that sometimes connection does not need explanation, and that the simplest moments shared presence, a steady gaze, a kind action, carry the deepest meaning. In that space by the lake, Elena felt her heart flutter with a softness she had not yet named. For a fleeting moment, the noise of the festival, the rush of the day, and the judgments of others all faded, leaving only a gentle recognition that some bonds, even unspoken, are quietly profound, and that life's most enduring warmth is often found in small, steady gestures. The days after the festival were calm and bright, the village buzzing gently with cheerful chatter about the success of the celebration. Elena walked among neighbors with a lightness she had not felt in weeks. Her heart warmed at the memory of standing beside Daniel by the moonlit lake, their silence comfortable and unforced. For the first time, she felt the world around her shift, pieces falling into place in ways both quiet and profound. The villagers began to accept Daniel. Clara was safe and smiling, and even Mrs. Whitmore's teasing seemed less pointed. It felt as though a new chapter had begun, one where peace and trust could finally grow. Yet tranquility rarely lasts unbroken, and the calm was soon disturbed by the arrival of a distant relative of Mrs. Whitmore, a sharp-tongued woman named Agnes, known for her love of drama and stirring whispers wherever she went. Within a day, she began spreading murmurs that Daniel intended to sell Hartwood Manor and leave the village. She claimed to have overheard fragments of a conversation with a merchant from the city, and her words painted him as selfish and uncaring. The rumor traveled quickly, slipping through streets and alleys until it reached Elena. And for the first time, she felt the cold grip of doubt tighten around her heart. At first, Elena tried to dismiss the gossip, telling herself that people always twisted stories to suit their fears or entertain themselves. Yet the thought of Daniel leaving, of the quiet strength she had come to admire disappearing without explanation, made her uneasy. One evening, driven by a mix of hurt and frustration, she walked to Hartwood Manor, each step heavy with emotion, and confronted Daniel, her voice trembling with a mixture of anger, fear, and longing. As she demanded the truth, she searched his face for signs of deceit. Daniel listened without interruption, his calm demeanor steadying her. When she finished, he explained patiently, each word measured. The merchant had come to discuss repairs and supplies needed to restore the manor. Nothing more. He had no thought of leaving. His only desire was to rebuild his family home and create a peaceful life in the village. Elena felt relief wash through her, quickly followed by shame for having believed the worst without seeking the truth. In that moment, she understood how easy it is to let whispers shape perception, and how trust, once extended, can heal misunderstandings. As she looked at Daniel, she felt a bond deepen between them, forged not only in shared kindness, but in the courage to speak and listen honestly. The night was calm and clear, the sky a deep velvet blue dotted with stars. The moon hung low over the lake, its pale light shimmering across the rippling water. Elena walked slowly along the familiar path, her shawl wrapped snugly around her shoulders. each step carrying her through memories of evenings spent here alone, pondering dreams too big for a small village. She thought of how much had changed since the night she first saw the flickering lights in Hartwood Manor, never imagining then how her life would intertwine with Daniel's. Her heart swelled with gratitude for the courage she had found in herself to face curiosity, fear, and misunderstanding. When she reached the lake's edge, Daniel was already there, seated on a smooth stone. Calm and composed. He looked up as she approached, a rare, gentle expression softening his usually guarded face. Elena sat beside him on the grass, the silence between them comfortable, almost like a shared language. They watched the moonlight dance across the water, its reflection fragmented by gentle ripples. The village behind them was quiet, only the distant chirping of crickets and the soft rustle of leaves punctuating the night. In that stillness, the world seemed to pause, offering clarity and perspective as their conversation began. It flowed slowly at first, then with ease, Daniel spoke of the years he had spent feeling adrift, of carrying burdens from family loss and betrayal, of the uncertainty he once believed would always shadow him. Yet now, with the manor slowly returning to life and the village beginning to accept him, he felt a quiet sense of belonging he had long feared he would never find. Elena listened thoughtfully, realizing how much courage it took to rebuild one's life from fragments. She shared how she had learned to reserve judgment, how easily gossip and assumptions could harm, and how understanding another's story could change not only one's perspective but also the rhythm of one's own life. Eventually, they rose to leave, walking side by side along the moonlit path, the silvery light painting the world with quiet beauty. There was no need for words of promise or declarations, only the understanding that trust and respect formed the foundation of meaningful connection. Elena reflected that some bonds are forged not through passion but through shared trials, patience, and the willingness to see clearly. And in that calm evening by the lake, she understood that true closeness often grows in silence, in understanding, and in the courage to meet life and people without fear.